People need to realize this is a new gospel. The gospel of Jesus Christ states that he who believes and is baptized shall be saved, he who does not shall be condemned. You know, this is something where this is a totally new gospel.
And so when we're confronted with these obviously heretical teachings, this new religion coming from those who purport to hold positions of authority in the church, we have to ask ourselves, what does the church teach about this? And if you look at what the doctors of the church have said, for instance, St. Robert Bellarmine, who addressed the question of what would happen if a man who claims to be the Pope were to become a manifest heretic, and he says this, quote, "A Pope who is a manifest heretic automatically ceases to be Pope and head, just as he ceases automatically to be a Christian and a member of the Church. Wherefore he can be judged and punished by the Church. This is the teaching of all the ancient fathers who teach that manifest heretics immediately lose all jurisdiction." And all the saints who have addressed this question of a Pope who becomes a manifest heretic agree that he would cease to be the Pope. In fact, if you have the book, The Catholic Controversy, you can get that from Tan Books. It's a very interesting book written by St. Francis de Sales, a doctor of the Church. He says in there, now when the Pope is explicitly a heretic, he falls ipso facto, by that very fact, from his dignity and out of the Church. So the conclusion follows from the fact that these claimants, these post-Vatican II claimants, are clearly heretics. We can prove that over and over again. And the teaching of the Catholic Church is that heretics cannot be popes.
And yes, and this is also the teaching of Pope Paul IV, who wrote in his bull Cum ex Apostolatus Officio that someone who would seem to be elected, even if all the cardinals seemed to elect him as Pope, if he could be shown to have deviated from the Catholic faith, that his election could not be accepted by anyone as being valid. So we have, the teaching of Pope Paul IV, we have the teaching of St. Alphonsus, St. Francis de Sales, St. Robert Bellarmine, all teaching that a manifest heretic cannot be Pope, that therefore, for that reason of him being a manifest heretic, and that it can be shown, public heresy is something that can be known by people. That's all that has to be known, is that he's doing these things, he's manifestly rejecting Catholic teachings. If people recognize those facts, or they can find out about that information, they must reject these people, because you have to, by divine laws, Pope Leo XIII states in his encyclical on the unity of the Church, Satis Cognitum, of June 29, 1896, that this unity of communion between people in the Catholic Church and the Pope is something that must be there. You have to have a oneness of faith with the Roman Pontiff if you have a valid one by divine law. You can't just say, well, my faith isn't the same as John Paul II or Benedict XVI. A lot of people are saying this kind of stuff. And Pope Pius XII, for example, in his encyclical Mystici Corporis Christi of June 29, 1943, states that those who are divided in faith or in government cannot be living in the unity of the same body, the same church. So if you would say that you don't have the same faith as John Paul II or Benedict XVI or Paul VI, what you're saying is that you're not in the same church as these persons. And if you do say that, well, yeah, my faith is the same as John Paul II or Benedict XVI, you're in communion with heretics, you're in a heretical church, you're not in the Catholic Church. And people would say, well, where is the Catholic Church then? St. Athanasius says that even if the church were reduced to a handful of true believers and, say, one priest, they would be the true church of Christ on earth.
And this is actually what's predicted by our Lord, as can be clearly seen in Luke 18:8, where he says, when the Son of Man returns, will he find the faith on the earth? There are many, many prophecies about anti-popes in the last days. St. Bernard was of the opinion that the Antichrist himself would be an anti-pope.
Yeah, he said actually that the only way that the Antichrist could deceive the whole world is by becoming an anti-pope, one whom the world at large would believe is a true pope, but in actual fact would not be. And because it's something where these guys are getting people to do what no emperor could do, namely to get people to give up their Catholic faith. Not that they could force anyone to do that, because anyone could resist, but they are attempting to get people to lose the faith, to embrace heresy, to assimilate and imbibe all these heretical things that will make them leave the Catholic Church. And see, the fact that they're claiming to be a pope or a bishop, and the people say, well, I'm just following them, that's how they're giving up their faith. And so therefore, that's why these guys are the most destructive and deadly persons that have ever lived.